consequences deadlier than ever. The Mafia has gone nuclear. A new syndicate has arisen from the shadows of the underworld, a mafia that is completely different than any other. This criminal organization deals in the most dangerous contraband ever to be traded on the black market. I'm talking about the radioactive materials used to make nuclear bombs. Welcome to the dawn of the nuclear mafia, a mutation of established crime organizations. Nuclear mafia combines the collaborative efforts of gangsters, scientists, corrupt businessmen, and government officials. Their customers include terrorist groups, third world countries, and hostile nations. In fact, anyone with the money and desire for weapons of mass destruction can acquire the services of the nuclear mafia. No other contraband has more value than the elements for the construction of nuclear bombs. Pound for pound, enriched uranium and plutonium are hundreds of times more expensive than drugs. Even material used in warheads and missile systems can be found on the black market. The exotic metal beryllium is sold for outrageous sums. The black market sale of nuclear material is a major departure from organized crime's normal means of illegal trade. Crime bosses used to say that they are in the business of giving the public what it wants. When Prohibition hit, the mob provided the bootleg booze the American people demanded, and an illegal drink was apparently more satisfying. Alcohol consumption shot up to record highs during Prohibition. The Mafia made a fortune. By catering to the public's appetite for gambling, the mob hit the jackpot again. They were there in the 60s when America's drug culture came of age. As flower children got high, the Mafia got rich. The South American drug barons cashed in the same way. The drug kings of Colombia get a cut off nearly every gram of coke sold in North America and Europe. In the 70s, the godfather of cocaine, Pablo Escobar, became one of the wealthiest men in the world. Asian crime lords forged empires in a similar manner. The multitude of opium dens in the Far East bankrolled the triads in the early 1900s. Their neighbors, the Yakuza, took advantage of the Japanese love of gambling. Now both are global enterprises built on the founding principles of all organized crime, providing illegal goods and services to the public. Now, for the first time, a syndicate's product is solely for a select group of customers with political agendas and deep pockets and the will to use weapons of mass destruction. With organized crime involvement, nuclear terrorism could now strike anywhere at any time. Many say a nuclear mafia aligned with fanatical and terrorist groups should have been predicted. After all, no one is more skilled at smuggling than organized crime. And moving a pound of uranium past customs is a lot easier than sneaking in 500 tons of cocaine.
I believe that regardless of the commodity, regardless of the crime that's being committed, people who want to move goods that are contraband, and regardless of what that is, be it drugs, be it nuclear material, be stolen goods. They'll turn to the organizations that conduct the transportation of those goods around the world and into the country they want it deposited in.
A decade ago, nuclear smuggling was a rare event. No longer. Many experts conclude the demand for nuclear weapons must be greater than ever. Recently, there has been a major increase in the trafficking of nuclear material.
In Romania, police announced that they are holding 2 individuals for attempting to sell stolen radioactive material. The 2 had in their possessions 82 kilograms of radioactive material, including enriched uranium.
Lithuanian officials have determined that the 100 kilograms of radioactive material seized last month from an armed gang is uranium.
The German Parliamentary Commission investigating a plutonium smuggling incident has learned that smugglers offered to supply 11 kilograms of Russian origin, weapons-grade plutonium enough to build 3 nuclear missiles.
According to Italian press reports, Italian prosecutors have arrested a man with links to the United States Central Intelligence Agency and an Italian-American mafia as part of their investigation of smuggling radioactive materials.
During a search of a car at the Polish-Czech border, Polish border guards discovered 11 cigarette pack-sized containers filled with strontium-90. Bulgarian police have broken an international smuggling ring involving Russians and Ukrainians.
This just in from Munich. Highly radioactive plutonium was found on board a commercial flight from Moscow. German SWAT teams apprehended the smugglers before the deadly cargo could be sold. Reportedly, the black market price of the 4 kilograms of plutonium needed to build a nuclear bomb is $350 million.
See, it doesn't make any difference if the kilogram of plutonium that shows up in a terrorist device comes from China or from Russia or from Kazakhstan. If it shows up, it's bad news.
There have been hundreds of attempts to steal nuclear materials in Russia. Often the thefts can be traced to workers employed at nuclear facilities or research centers. Even live nuclear warheads have gone missing from weapons assembly plants. The stolen nuclear goods can then be fenced to organized crime. In the late 90s, the secret workings of the nuclear mafia first came to the surface with the discovery of a smuggling operation that was being run through a seaport in Lithuania. It started out as just a routine investigation by a tough cop. The case file read like the usual gang war, but to Detective Joseph Rimkevicius, the violence and killings just didn't add up.
The port of Klaipėda, Lithuania's gateway to the world. Unfortunately, it has also become the crossroads for smugglers of all kinds. My caseload is the usual: drug running, black market liquor, cigarette smuggling. But this case, contract killings, bombed vehicles, shootouts, it didn't make sense. But then I got the break I needed. I didn't know it was from a dead woman.
They said to give you this.
Not again. Lola.
Person's got to earn a living.
In the new Lithuania, there are jobs for everybody.
Ha!
This doesn't look good. We've got you on hooking and possession.
It was consensual. And the dope wasn't mine.
You, work the docks, don't you? Tricks for all those hard-up sailors.
They are my boyfriends, all of them.
There's some unusual activity on the port these days.
Lola knows nothing. I am a good girl.
I have a hunch that there is a smuggling operation in the works. Something important. I'll go easy on you.
I tell you anything. I walk.
Done.
I know something. Important people wouldn't like me talking.
Trust me. Lola. It turned out a Russian thug was one of her jobs. He told her everything. How a Russian crime gang was bringing in a special shipment through Klaipeda, and our local gangs were fighting for a piece of the action. But the Russians weren't about to roll over and make any payoffs. Too bad about Lola. But her tip was right on the money.
The chief detective of Lithuania's port city had not a clue to what triggered the gang war. But a police informer told him about a mysterious shipment from Russia, something of great value to important people.
Too bad about Lola. But her tip was right on the money. Whatever it was stashed right under our nose. The Lithuanian bank. To clear the bank, I used the cover of a bomb threat. I didn't know how close to the truth that was. They had turned the power off. Crazy bureaucrats.
Капитан! Капитан!
What is it?
Смотрите, что я нашел.
Yuri, find something. Pry it open. Check them all. Open all the crates. Open them all. All of them.
Это радиоактивно.
It's radioactive. It's radioactive. Out of here, everybody!
Shipping invoices stuffed in the crates were from Minatom, the Ministry of Atomic Energy in Russia. It has factories in Sverdlovsk. Interestingly, many consider Sverdlovsk the gangster capital of Russia. Its industries rely on mineral resources and military-industrial complexes. But now, Russia hasn't enough money to pay its nuclear scientists and engineers. A prescription for corruption by the nuclear mafia.
Have a cigarette.
I found out how easy it was when I talked to the head of the Nuclear Materials Division.
Detective, I tell you, I did nothing illegal. As chief of the department, I know what surplus materials we have at our nuclear facilities. I heard that a facility in Obninsk was storing extra beryllium. And if you would take the time to review our confusing government policies, you would see that I am allowed to trade materials that are not on a special control list.
Then talk me through the process.
I simply had to get order form from headquarters in Moscow. Minatom has a branch in Moscow. From the printing press, I got papers without the Minatom letterhead on it, and that's how it started. You know, we deal and...
Who supplied the financing?
A businessman I know from Sverdlovsk. He now lives in Moscow. Boris Dmitriev.
Where did he get his money?
His money? I'm a scientist, I don't know. Karate clubs.
Karate clubs, my ass. That gentleman operates in the gray zone between the legal world and the underworld. One way that Russian organized crime makes money is through the buying and selling of commodities. buy the materials in rubles, and sell them outside the country for dollars. For businessmen like him, this was an easy way to make a fortune. His rise to wealth and power began when he defied the communists and opened a string of video shops that were outlets for black market pornography smuggled from Europe and America. He emerged after the fall of communism as one of the new breed of Soviet businessmen who worked both sides of the law. In the early 90s, he opened up a chain of karate clubs. These so-called sports clubs are actually training grounds for thugs hired as security to protect mafia bosses.
I told Dmitriev that I knew a man in Switzerland who knew a man in North Korea who was willing to buy beryllium for $24 million, but he had to supply the muscle and the financing for it. Very simple, case closed. Can I go?
Yet. One more time. So, Igor arranged for Dmitri's men to smuggle the beryllium to Switzerland by way of Lithuania.
I tell you, I did nothing illegal.
The Russian authorities never arrested anyone for smuggling radioactive materials. We seized the beryllium, but couldn't arrest anyone. What's illegal in one country is obviously legal in another. As long as the present laws remain on the books and corruption plagues the officials running these facilities, the nuclear mafia will always have the upper hand.
The beryllium was bound for North Korea. It is believed the Mafia was tracking that nation's attempt to develop nuclear weapons for years. Now, with widespread corruption in Russia and the reduction of their nuclear security, many conclude it won't be long before North Korea possesses a nuclear arsenal. The Soviet Union that was once called the Evil Empire is long dead. The systems that once prevented the theft of nuclear weapons died with it. The Cold War is over. Nuclear weapons development has diminished, but the stockpiles remain. With an underworld organization specializing in the theft of nuclear materials, the prospect of nuclear devastation is greater now than at any time in the history of nuclear arms, which began over 5 decades ago. In August of 1945, the atom was cracked and a horrible new weapon brought World War II to a swift and decisive end.
The atom had been harnessed for ground warfare, and a new chapter in ordnance had been written in the now familiar towering, billowing, and sinister mushroom cloud, trademark of the atomic explosion.
But the nuclear genie was out. Soon the arms race was on. Throughout the next 3 decades, the weapons labs in the Soviet Union and the United States were going full tilt. Many feared the 2 superpowers were racing to see who could blow up the world the most times.
This is the terror that once again casts its eerie shadow over the face of the earth. The hydrogen bomb. The bomb that Khrushchev announces will once again undergo...
At the height of the Cold War, the combined arsenal of the 2 superpowers was over 100,000 nuclear warheads. The entire world lived on the edge of an abyss. It was predicted the ash from a nuclear war would blot out the sun. Nuclear winter would descend on the world, and a final, lifeless, dark age would begin. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the world stepped back from the brink of a nuclear war. But the threat from nuclear weapons is worse than ever. Decades of testing and research have unraveled the complexities of nuclear bomb construction.
Against land, air, sea, and undersea targets. The Navy also has a submarine...
The power of mass communication has made the secrets to nuclear weapons development well known.
The supply of Army-fired atomic weapons from the ZI to the using units is a function of specially trained ordnance units.
Radioactive ingredients for bomb making appear to be flowing through a vast nuclear underground. Advanced early warning systems, Star Wars defense, all that high-tech stuff can't prevent a nuclear attack by suicidal terrorists. Plant a few of the most primitive atomic bombs in large cities, and you could bring a country to its knees.
God forbid if we do have a nuclear accident, a nuclear event in Washington, D.C., where, not 100 people, but thousands of people are killed. Our whole culture is destroyed, our arts, all the things that make us a nation. We won't recognize ourselves on the other side of that event.
In the mid-1980s, Russia's nuclear arsenal amounted to over 45,000 weapons. Today, estimates put the total in the range of 3,000. People in the know say we can't count on the security of Russia's remaining arsenal.
There was no more central control on all the weapons that the Soviet Union possessed. Now they were individually controlled in the geography where they were deposited. And all those individual countries held the keys to those depositories. And depending upon where they were and the strength of the criminal organizations within those countries, the threat of that material being stolen, removed, or paid for and distributed to some terrorist organization or a rogue country that would distribute it to a terrorist organization increased 100-fold.
In 1996, a meeting on nuclear safety was held in Moscow. Russian scientists attending announced it could take a decade to be certain the nearly 100 facilities are safe from theft. Nuclear materials smuggled out of Russia follow two principal routes. Interpol identifies a route running west through Eastern European countries like Poland and continuing into countries such as Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Interpol has targeted Germany as a central hub of the underworld's nuclear network. Another path uses the same smuggling route that narcotics traffickers use to move heroin out of Central Asia. The flow of immigrants and tourists through Russia's border crossings makes the use of nuclear detection equipment impractical. Stolen nuclear material can pass unnoticed. A treaty agreement has eliminated border controls between Russia and former Soviet republics. Without border controls, smugglers can traffic nuclear goods with little threat of arrest. If they are picked up, they'll simply resort to payoffs.
The problem is that there are limits on coordination because law enforcement personnel are being paid off by organized crime not to cooperate. Sometimes organized crime feeds erroneous information into Interpol just to prevent enforcements, so that there are all kinds of problems in cooperation. But without cooperation, one can't address the problem.
The smuggling of nuclear material is an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Criminals who move radioactive cargo have no concern for ecology, no understanding of the extreme toxic nature of radioactive elements. If stolen plutonium or enriched uranium enter the ecosystem, it could contaminate the environment for centuries.
There isn't an international law enforcement effort that is capable of addressing this problem.
The best defense against the nuclear black market is an ironclad security system of safeguards for nuclear weapons and materials. The ultimate customer of black market nuclear commodities is likely to be a government, a terrorist group, or a political entity without laws or boundaries.
Customs in the last 20 years has defended the United States against terrorist organizations in the smuggling of toxic substances such as nerve gas, biochemical weaponry. Rogue nations like Iraq and Iran have both many times tried to either gain that type of weaponry from within the United States or bring it into the United States.
There are organized crime strike forces that exist throughout the United States with personnel who are just dedicated to studying this problem. In different parts of the country, for example, in Miami and California, there are special interagency government working groups that combine law enforcement from Customs, INS, IRS, all the different agencies to work together to try and address this in a coordinated fashion.
In addition to the strike force, the Nuclear Emergency Search Team, or NEST, employs several scientists and technicians. Headquartered in a top-secret facility in Nevada, the NEST team is on 24-hour standby. When a nuclear threat is detected, the FBI acts as a SWAT team, and NEST supplies the technicians trained to find and defuse a nuclear device.
There are times when I wish the communists would make a comeback, the good old-fashioned Bolsheviks, and take over, because they were far more secure at time than as of today.
Sam Cohen was part of the Manhattan Project, the team of scientists that first produced the atom bomb. In the 50s, he worked for the RAND Corporation on the problem of nuclear proliferation. Decades later, he's still concerned with the spread of the bomb, but now it's due to a mysterious substance called red mercury.
With all this black marketeering and smuggling that's come out of the Soviet Union via the Mafia and other nefarious elements and so on, the proliferation problem has gotten ever so much scary. But the component of nuclear proliferation that worries me most of all, by far and away, are red mercury devices.
For years, rumors have circulated throughout intelligence communities about a chemical called red mercury. Some say red mercury could be the most expensive commodity on the black market. Supposedly, the mysterious substance can be used to build inexpensive nuclear bombs, small enough to fit in a suitcase. Reportedly, red mercury was first developed in the Soviet Union during the late 60s for industrial purposes. It was later discovered that the chemical could be used in nuclear weapons.
Some ingenious Soviet scientists figured out a way of treating the ordinary, harmless red mercury and turning it into a compound with a tremendous energy content.
Purportedly, red mercury shrinks the size of the radioactive core in the bomb. When you mix red mercury with plutonium, the bomb can be reduced in size. A conventional nuclear weapon weighs in the range of 350 pounds to around 2 tons for a 50 megaton monster. Some estimates say red mercury could shrink the size of a nuclear bomb by 80% and with no loss of its destructive force. This is why third world nations and terrorists are willing to spend millions to acquire red mercury. This makes a chemical highly attractive to the nuclear mafia, especially since currently there are no laws to control the sales of red mercury.
They know a very profitable area when they see one. And the government, it's not powerless to prevent this, but it would be extremely difficult to control these people.
To date, international authorities have never confiscated pure red mercury. This has led many world governments to dismiss the red mercury threat as nothing more than a 21st century snake oil scam. Just crooks conning crooks, swindling customers who wouldn't know red mercury from cherry cola.
Part of which they peddled was phony. You know, as P.T. Barnum once said, there's a sucker born every minute.
But Cohen and others believe the phony deals conceal a global red mercury production and distribution network.
It's certainly being produced in Russia. It may or may not be produced in a number of other countries, such as Israel, which has the most logical need for a battlefield for red mercury weapons imaginable. South Africa has dealt with red mercury weapons, but I'm more inclined to believe that they receive their red mercury via smugglers rather than actually producing it themselves. It'll go from one peddler to another, and it gets highly competitive, and some of these guys, they'll kill each other off in the most grisly fashion, as exemplified by one horrendous killing in South Africa. That was just awful.
The murder took place in Johannesburg, South Africa. The victim worked for a chemical company. The company did business in the Middle East.
Initial autopsy on an Alan Kidger. Occupation, sales director for the international firm of Tor Chemicals. Citizenship, British-born. Residing in Johannesburg, South Africa. Kidger was last seen by his wife. She reported Kidger had seemed worried, on edge for days. He never said why.
Yeah. Yeah, Kidger here. Yeah.
Kidger mumbled something to the caller, then said he had to go meet someone, that he wouldn't be long. Kidger never returned. A stolen vehicle was found a few days later. Kidger was discovered in the trunk, body parts wrapped in plastic. I can see no defensive injuries. I therefore believe Kidger must have known the attacker. The swelling at the base of the skull indicates that Kidger suffered a severe blow to the head. It is my opinion that this was not a fatal injury. They then covered the body in this red, oily substance. Due to a lack of blood pooling in the extremities, Kidger must have been alive when they began dismemberment. They severed the arms, legs, gluteus, and head. Judging from the jagged cracks in these bones, it looks like they used a consumer-grade saw. Preliminary tests on this red, oily substance show it contains heavy amounts of mercury. Curious.
The investigation suggested the chemical salesman might have been selling product with military applications. Due to the nature of the killing and the fact the body was coated in red, some speculate the murder was a warning to stay away from red mercury. This theory gained credibility 2 years later, when another South African man was found dead.
Initial autopsy on a Don Lang. Occupation, import-export business. Citizenship, South African. Cause of death, suicide. Lang had been arrested for possession of radioactive materials around the same time as that of the Kidger case. The police persuaded Lang to participate in a sting operation, resulting in the arrest of 2 men who were reportedly selling red mercury. A few days later, police find Lang dead. There was a suicide note. Supposedly, red mercury is the most expensive commodity in the world, also the deadliest. The chemical reduces the quantity of plutonium required for nuclear weapons. Red mercury could then enable the manufacturing of small nuclear bombs, ideal terrorist weapons, and Lang exported chemicals to the Middle East. So did Kidja. Initial examination agrees with case detectives. Death by asphyxiation. However, I do note there is bruising on the neck and left arm. These marks on the neck are most likely from the rope used. I don't believe Lang could have tied it off with sufficient force to leave these neck abrasions. I think the suicide was faked. These bruises could be the result of a person or persons holding Lang against his will. A person or persons pulled a plastic bag over the head of the deceased. The bruises on the hands and wrist are consistent with defensive blows. They then sealed off the trachea with a rope. Opinion of medical examiner. Probable cause of death. Homicide. Probable motive. Red mercury.
Despite a bloody trail of dead bodies with links to red mercury, the United States government refuses to recognize the danger posed by red mercury. Some believe this could be a policy we will all one day regret.
What they were afraid of is that someday that these pure fusion weapons might become feasible, and in which case then you would have a golden horde of plenty for these awful terrorist weapons. And the United States did not want to admit to that possibility.
Utilizing nuclear elements and technology supplied by organized crime, an attack on U.S. soil by a terrorist group may not only be a rising possibility, but the weapon could be more horrifying than one can imagine. The ultimate terrorist weapon would be cheap, small, and easily smuggled. It would be able to kill hundreds of thousands of people, but without harming structures. This sounds like science fiction, but actually a nuclear weapon does exist that has the ability to kill but not destroy. And a prime ingredient in this ideal terrorist weapon is red mercury.
What I realized is that that substance, if properly treated, can be transformed into a very strange kind of explosive, which is capable of making a nuclear explosion without benefit of plutonium or uranium. A so-called pure fusion device.
A nuclear bomb generates most of its destructive force in tremendous heat and a massive shock wave. Only a small portion of the bomb's power is released in the form of radioactive particles. But a fusion bomb transmits nearly all its energy in the form of particles called neutrons. A bomb works like a monstrous X-ray gun, killing people with a single zap of neutrons but leaving banks, roads, telecommunications, and power systems untouched.
And by comparison with the blast and heat effects that come out of such a device, the neutrons are all dominating, and they also happen to be people killers. But they're able to kill people without destroying.
While working with the defense establishment, Sam Cohen invented a pure fusion device. It was called a neutron bomb.
The device can be so light and so small that it could be roughly the size of a baseball. Now, it'll weigh more. It may weigh as much as 7, 8, 10 pounds or something like that. But from a terrorist standpoint, you know, here, not a suitcase bomb. You know, here is a bowling ball bag bomb, you know, practically. You could almost carry it in your pocket.
If you had the same material in Europe, nuclear material that's in Europe, and you wanted to get it to the United States, the easiest path is the path of least resistance. Bring it across the Mexican border. And use the organizations in Mexico that bring everything else into this country that is contraband.
One pint-sized neutron bomb is capable of annihilating the population of a downtown district or government facility. A few suitcase-sized neutron bombs smuggled in by the Mafia for a terrorist group would be enough to hold a city hostage.
They have no conscience about what crosses our border. They'll bring it. And they've never shown a conscience about that. So the prospect of nuclear material entering the United States through the southern border is highly probable. I think the simplest way to smuggle that kind of material in the United States is to label it for what it is and bring it in as legitimate commercial shipments such as medical materials that are radioactive.
We're running ahead, hopefully, of the terrorist that's trying to acquire these nuclear materials. We know our systems have been in place. We know that they have prevented and detected attempted diversions of nuclear materials.
It produce an awful lot of damage as a terrorist weapon or as a dream battlefield. But what worries me most of all is terrorism. The development and manufacture and proliferation of such devices is perfectly legal in terms of the nuclear arms control agreements.
We feel like that we're doing a very good job, the best job we can, of making sure that those materials don't find their way into the hands of a terrorist organization.
The aspect of finding that without specific information and the odds of finding it just on happenstance are astronomical.
If an improvised nuclear device is ever used in this country or in Paris or London, that it will fundamentally change Western civilization in ways that we cannot even anticipate.
Civilization may be able to withstand a certain amount of drug smuggling and black market trade. But if a nuclear warhead fell into the hands of criminal terrorists, it would be a cataclysmic threat to both the public and to world peace. I'm Robert Stack. Thanks for joining.